Welcome to Identity Unboxed, where we provide mentorship and promote representation for Black professionals in the advancement of the Black community.
We are seeking guidance from exceptional Black leaders, scholars, and professionals with expertise in their respective fields.
We hope to foster a space that promotes authenticity, inclusivity, and restoration for our listeners while exploring the intersection of our personal and professional lives.
This project is a culmination of our lived experiences as young Black professionals to transform our life trajectories, to overcome adversity and reach triumph.
Our intention is to inspire you on your path to discovering your purpose. All right. Well, hello, Paul. We are so grateful to have you here on Identity Unboxed with us. You have decades of experience as an executive in the nonprofit sector. You are the Chief Executive Officer of Friends of Youth, a nonprofit organization that helps homeless youth in need. And just to start our conversation today, we're really hoping to understand the misconceptions that lead to homelessness and housing insecurity for people in the Seattle area and across Washington state. We know that you have extensive experience with that, but we kind of wanted to get started just with your past leading into the nonprofit sector. So we would love to dive into the moment that you decided to pursue a career in the nonprofit sector and what drew you to work in this space.
Yeah, great question. And thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this. So, my journey started a few years ago. I'm a Missouri boy, so I claimed St. Louis, Missouri as my home. And I was just a college student looking for a gig, to tell you the truth. And that's how I bumped into the not-for-profit space. Just working on Saturdays with the YMCA. That was my first introduction to not-for-profit. And my plan at the time, going to college, was I'll kind of do this gig, and when I'm done, when I graduate, I'll move on to bigger and better things. I wanted to be an attorney at the time, so that was kind of my first foray. What I quickly found out was, as the more you work the job, you get to meet people, you get a deeper awareness of why people partake in whatever activity they were partaking in with that particular not-for-profit. And I think for me, I enjoyed that work. It was easy for me to fit in and just to go through the process of everyday operations. And what ended up happening was my Saturday job became this part-time job that I also did during the week, like twice a week. Then it became 3 times a week. Then it became 20 hours during the week and Saturday. And eventually a lot of training, a lot of experience I got over the years to the point where it became full-time. And I still have this notion that, when I graduate, I'll get a real job, and I'll move on from this. Well, I guess I graduated a couple of times, and I still stayed where I was in the not-for-profit field. Spent 22 years or so with that organization, and then spent a few more here with Friends of Youth, and that's kind of what brought me here. But really, if you ask me what drew you to the work in the space and what kept me in the space, I do have to say it is the privilege of when you understand the privilege you have to be able to impact different people's lives. And what that privilege means to me is what keeps me in the work today.
Thank you so much. That's so great to hear. And it's so great to see that you're, following your path still. That's something that you knew when you first got in the nonprofit sector, and you've kind of followed that through all the way to being the CEO of Friends of Youth, which is a nonprofit organization that offers a comprehensive range of services for youth and young adults and families, from behavioral health services to housing assistance and residential treatment services and so on. I know Tiana and I were able to attend the ribbon cutting ceremony for the Willows facility, and that was just amazing to witness and to see. And so you're leading the charge as the chief executive officer on a lot of this stuff. And we would like to know, what was your path like getting to that CEO level, that executive level, where only 5.9% of Black professionals occupy C-suite level positions, according to a 2022 report from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics?
Yeah, that's a great question. And my journey is, I wouldn't say my journey is any different, but it's also unique in the sense it's Paul's journey. And, just like I said, from Missouri, with the organizational it took me to many different cities and different states as I was, if you want to call it climbing the ladder or growing in my profession. And I did go through, one of the things that in the not-for-profit sector, if you really want to move up, more than half the time you have to move out. So you have to look for this opportunity, maybe somewhere else, that gives you that opportunity to prove to show your skill set and what you know. So my pathway, I spent about 13 years, doing my craft in Missouri, and then I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and then from there I went to Indianapolis, Indiana, and finally I ended up in Seattle. So that was a long journey, but during the journey, it's you're enhancing your toolbox all the time. But I would also say you get a chance to the best thing about especially moving out is you get to reinvent yourself. So you really do get that chance to reinvent yourself and say, hey, here's who I am. Missouri is just Missouri. So you're in a red state. I'll just tell you that. And you are also in a state where for people who look like me, there is a lot of good old boys network where a lot of people who come through the ranks are the locals who for the most part people hire people who look like them, sound like them, talk like them, have the same paradigm. So there's a lot of that. So the opportunity really to grow your resume by going to different places and having a shot at proving yourself really worked out very, very well for me, and that would be the uniqueness of my journey. So I was in the program ranks doing a lot of things in my hometown, but I think when my first big shot was making it to be a lower level executive, if you want to say that, of a very small fledgling operation, and that's why you get hired. So you move to something that's probably managing. And as a program person, I was managing. I don't know. I'd probably say about 100 employees in St. Louis, and you move from that to even smaller to something like 75 employees, but you're moving to a place where you are the executive director. And that was my first journey into Albuquerque as an executive director, managing a bigger budget, but fewer employees because it was a smaller shop. And, you do that for a few years and you get those skills, and then you move on to the next thing. And you go to, for me, I'm going to Indiana. And, at least now you have something on your resume to show that you have done the work and people give you a chance. And as you probably already know, for people, for Black executives, it is hard. It is hard if you're just, applying and trying to get to a job. So you really have to, at least for my generation, you really had to have this body of work, and a lot of people who would be willing to be references for you. So I was fortunate to have folks who would write good references for me, but I also have the body of work. So by the time I'd been an executive for at least 2 stints in over maybe 10 years, that really helps coming to a bigger city and saying, okay, now I'm going for the big city and a big job in Seattle. And so I came into Seattle, and at least I had a body of work and a strong resume to be considered, and that's kind of how I got the job. But the more interesting thing about the Seattle job at the time, when I got my job, So I was the first executive director related to the YMCA, who was a Black executive director who was at a suburban branch. So most of the suburban branches were really where they had the better programs, more cash, so to speak. And so this was a first for them, and so it was kind of exciting to be in that vein. And they knew that they were looking for somebody of color for many different reasons, and it was exciting to be part of that process. I love my time there. I went straight from Indianapolis, Indiana to Bellevue. It's a very big shift, but that was kind of nice, kind of cool. Did my thing, and it's only gotten better. When I left the Y, I was a senior executive of the Y. By the time I left, I had multiple branches that I had to oversee, and about 500 employees. So the body of work kept on growing, and finally I got this opportunity to be a CEO of an agency. So I would say, yes, for me, it was at least the generation I came from. You kind of had to put in the time and prove that you could do the work, and that's kind of how you made it, and that's kind of my journey. So not too exciting, but a little bit just unique that I was from the Midwest and really kind of had to travel all around the country to get to Seattle. And Seattle was a targeted move. I always wanted to come here, so I finally, made my dreams come true.
Thank you so much for going into detail, Paul, just about your journey and making your way on over to Seattle and to now being a CEO. And you did touch on the point of kind of that culture of nepotism that you encounter early on as a Black professional, and kind of feeling like maybe you might not fit in there, in the boardroom. So could you kind of share any advice you have for someone that is kind of confronting imposter syndrome, if that's something that maybe you experienced early on, and maybe also what are some qualities you think compose a successful leader?
Yeah, so I think whether it was nepotism or whatever ism was there that was limiting at least my generation, a lot of us from moving up the ranks. I would say this critical thing that I advise anyone is, knowing yourself is probably the most important thing. Knowing yourself, then once you know yourself, is understanding the challenge. Those are two things that really help you, and being realistic about the challenge. Going to Indianapolis, I went to Indianapolis when, saw all kinds of crazy things going on. Things like KKK rallies going on at the time. It was a different world. But it's knowing the challenge, like what's really the challenge. Are you willing to accept that challenge? But I'd tell you the more key things that I'd say, because so you know yourself, you understand the challenge. Do you understand the culture? I think that cultural piece is, do you understand the culture? And if you understand the culture, do you have the power resources? Because I think a lot of us just say, I'll bear it all, I'll hang in there, blah, 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 blah. Those things, they're great, but I think they do more damage. Personally, that's my viewpoint or bias is, I think if you know the culture and you understand your power resources could be, the people who brought you in, or, your board, the employees you have, or whatever it is that, when times get rough and things get hard, that there's always going to be this backing, because usually for people of color, that's the thing that's never there. When things when things get hot, it's just not there, or there's not enough of it. So knowing that, but if you can get through that individual side of it, of your awareness of what's going on, is also knowing that you have an ability and responsibility to the work, and really being able to parlay that I have this responsibility to the work, and I know myself, and I kind of know what's going on. I think that's very helpful, and it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time, which is the thing that sucks. So you learn a lot of things, and unfortunate thing about being a person of color, and just like you use the statistic 5.9, is what you realize is you're a pioneer more times than not. You're the first who's ever doing this. So It's really trial and error. You're figuring things out. You don't know who to go to. You have no people to go to. And, so you just really, that's where those things of knowing yourself and understanding the challenge, and especially who your power resources are, that you can go to your power resources when you fail and you have to pick yourself up. There's people who are backing you. There are people who are helping you. Those are really important things. And I would say, I think those are some pivotal things in my career that I had to learn, and learn sometimes the hard way, in a failing way, but failing forward, that have helped me to get to where I am today.
Thank you so much for touching on that. I feel like that's such a valuable lesson that you just shared, and just voicing that experience, because I could only imagine for your generation how much worse it was than we're experiencing now. But even today, I apply for jobs, or I shoot for these positions, and I know that I'm a younger Black man. I already, we could talk about it all, but it's like I already know internally often what I'm capable of. And it's like, just because I don't have all of the huge network and, 15 years of experience, at a desk job, doesn't mean that I'm not just as capable, if not more capable, at achieving great things in the job. But, that's often something that we carry around. And we know that as Black folks, but like you said, we're often pioneers. Like, we come with new ideas where we want to change things, we want to really make things better, from a lens that's outside of the norm. And oftentimes, we don't have a lot of power and resources in these positions, and then negative things end up happening. And so thank you for sharing that, and just vocalizing that, because that is such a common experience, and it needs to be talked about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I echo everything Brad said. And that point of being assured in your abilities, especially when you have that added pressure of being the first or the only in the room, and understanding that it's okay to fail forward. So, Paul, I love that you brought up that phrase, because that's something that I've learned to embody, is it's okay to make mistakes, and that's part of our growth process. And you're not going to be perfect at everything the first time. So failing, that's just all part of getting better and reaching success. So, and honest, and kind of going off of that point, I wanted to touch on maybe a pivotal moment in your career. You talked about your journey of maybe struggling a little bit early on when you got into executive positions. But was there a specific moment where you felt like, okay, this is, the path I should be going on, or maybe, whoa, what am I doing here?
I think there are several pivotal moments, and half the time you don't even know they're pivotal moments. I think if you talk to most people who are leaders, they'll tell you. Obviously, the ones that stick out the most is when, here's what I'd say personally is, and I've learned this from other leaders, is when you are most uncomfortable. Okay, so the old saying, it's the wearer of the shoes who knows where it pinches, right? Everyone sees your shoes and they're like, "You're great shoes," and you're like, "I am dying in these shoes." Okay, so it's only you who knows that piece. Okay, so I think pivotal moments is I would say, again, I'll go back to when you get to that place where the light bulb goes on and you understand that you have an ability, but more so you have a responsibility. I think those are all the pivotal moments, because you wanting to do something, we think you should do something, or people imploring you to do this, that, the other, and you're unsure, or you're anxious or scared, or whatever it is. But I think if you talk about pivotal using that word, it's when it sinks in that I do have a responsibility, or there is especially in a not-for-profit space, there is a moral imperative that I have to do this. So it doesn't just happen early in your career. It happens almost every year in your career, several times. You mentioned Willows. I do remember these conversations we had 3-4 years ago with our board. They were hard conversations. It was, do we keep on leasing out space with our partners who have been great partners for many years, but the only amount of space we can get is 3,000 square feet to serve about 20 different people. And the same space is used for eating, for case management, for sleeping, for doing everything. Everyone knows your business. You throw mats on the floor, you pick them up, you change, you put tables up, you do your thing. Now, you don't have the resources to have your own place. I remember Friends of Youth is a 72-year-old organization. And we've survived and really worked with many different partnerships, whether it's faith-based or other not-for-profits. So it's really looking at that. And the thing that was on the table at the time was our clients are telling us that for them to improve or to get better, they need certain things. We need to be able to have showers. We need to be able to have laundry service. We need to be able to have a kitchen where, we can have 3 meals a day. We were not 24 hours back then. They needed these services 24 hours, 365. So they were saying all these things to you, not only vocally, client surveys, we had a youth advisory board. So they were telling you these things for years. And, finally decide one day, you're reading through this thing and you're like, ouch, 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 this hurts. They're saying all these things. And what am I supposed to do in light of limited resources, just limited so many things? But getting to that moment, that's those pivotal moments where what is the right thing to do? And I knew that I have to go not only, people say with advocacy, it's not advocacy, I have to be the voice for those young people. Because they don't have a voice in the tables that need to hear this voice. I do have that space. So I have this responsibility. I have this responsibility of doing something with it. Not really very clearly defining it. You just know I have to do something. So you go to the board and say, hey, this is what young people are saying to us, and this is our current situation. And I think we need to deal with it. And, they say, well, this, that, the other. And I have to be now the advocacy kicks in when you understand that it's not just the responsibility. There's a moral imperative that, if you say you're going to be Friends of Youth and you say you're doing this work because of this, that, the other, here's your opportunity. Sometimes leaders do not necessarily solve every problem, but they help people through the problem. To say, okay, as a leader, what's this transformational thing that I can do related to this issue? And I think those are those pivotal moments where I say to the board, now this is a deal breaker. We have to do this. And, spending probably another 6 months getting them to that space. And then getting that excitement of, okay, now we're all in this space. How do we even do it? We still don't have the resources and we don't have whatever. And, $6-7 million later, here we are at this place where, truthfully and honestly, for the three of us on this call, the board, we have no idea how many people it's going to serve because it's going to exceed our longevity in the space of the work. And, it's still going to be there. So those are the things that I would say. It's just really that when it hits you, being able to do that. Sometimes it's not always, this is a great story to tell, but sometimes it's not always that way. It's the other way. But still being able to recognize that, and I started a conversation with saying, about privilege. There are many people who don't have the privilege of sitting at these tables, having the access, having the networks, and not even that, having the experience to say, I've seen this movie before, and I know kind of how it can end if I'm willing to lend myself to saying, hey, I can move this a little bit further. And if I get the right partners, we can actually move it even a whole lot further. But I think those are the pivotal moments that determine who you are. And, I think Barack Obama, or Michelle Obama, it was Michelle Barack, who had this saying about, the difficulties about being in charge, or sorry, it was Barack, and being president is not where you stand. The difficulty about the job is the job reveals who you are. So you will get to these moments where it will reveal who you are. In that situation that I gave you, it was revealing even to me. It's like, okay, this is what you feel passionately or strongly about, and you're willing to say, I'm going to do this. Not for me necessarily, but just for a lot of people who may need this service, and break away from what we were doing and really say it's about the integrity, it's about the decency, it's about really trying to support people who are telling us this is what I need for support, and just going at it doggedly and trying to achieve that.
You touched on so many great points, and I really appreciate your perspective. It's so nice to hear just from, a person of color, a Black person that's in a position like that. And you touched on so many important points of, knowing your privilege, that there are many folks that don't have the opportunity to be at the table and get a seat at the table, speak to those board members, and, actually have power and influence in these organizations. And I think it's really admirable that you use your influence and that you recognize that as you continue to engage in your work. And, one thing I really enjoyed that you said was about, getting that, client feedback, the youth feedback, those that you serve, like really making sure that you understand their needs. Because I feel like, in, the nonprofit sector, in the public sector, and this is just my personal opinion, but I feel like the overall weight of the world is just getting, difficult to bear in general. And, a lot of people kind of forget that, public service and, working for a nonprofit organization that's doing something as important as helping homeless youth is, for a while, it can be for some, it's not just a job where, you clock out and, you go to your 9 to 5. It's like, this is work where you're actively building and trying to help people and, constantly, course correcting and improving what you're working on. And, it's really a continuous effort to improve lives. And it really takes that, you humbling yourself and, finding that common ground between one another and recognizing that this is about humanity, these things that we do. It's bigger than, self and self-motivation. And I really feel like you just embodied that as a leader in what you just described.
Thank you very much for those kind words. And I would say, yes, very true. And I think not just me embodying this, I think you guys just even having this conversation where not-for-profit is a space where you go about your work every day. And it's, we call it a thankless job. No one remembers what you did last year. A year from now, no one's going to remember Willows. They're going to all be like, oh, you need to do this. And you got to move on. But I think you guys highlighting this for me actually really is, that's why I said I was looking forward to it, because it helps you remember the journey that I have taken to get here and appreciate it. Even if no one else is appreciating, I'm appreciating it.
Absolutely. And yeah, just keep going. We are supporting you as a community. You're seen, and it's important for you to recognize that as you continue to lead in the space, because, something that, I feel is just lacking is it seems like there is just a lack of middle ground in finding common understanding of what the issues truly are. For example, I was talking to a friend recently on the issue of homelessness and crime, and they were just like, Seattle, I love the city. I love that it's, more liberal, but it just feels like we're living in a lawless city, and these, homeless people are running around doing drugs, committing crimes, and it's like they just get let out of jail and nothing happens. And, it's like, well, it goes deeper than that, because do we stick with the status quo of just throwing everybody in jail and not getting to the root of the problem? Or do we actually try to meet each other in the middle? And so this is something that I brought up in, the conversation. It's, what is that middle ground? There's that hard, let's just throw them in jail. And there's that don't do anything. And then there's bridging the gap, building that support. That's the one thing that's missing is, organizations like Friends of Youth being resourced enough to build more facilities like Willows and things like that, so that instead of throwing people in jail, we can actually get them the help that they are so desperately needing. Going forward with the next question, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in 2022, their annual homelessness report to Congress, more than half of all people experiencing homelessness and insecurity in the country were in 4 states, California, New York, Florida, Washington, with over 25,000 experiencing housing insecurity in our state. And so going back to what I was saying before about, just the conversations of, the politics behind it all, what have been some common misconceptions that you hope to dispel, as people go back and forth on, what the solution is to ending homelessness in our society?
Tune in next week to hear part 2 of this episode. Thank you so much for listening to Identity Unboxed.
We are so grateful for your support, and thank you for listening to Identity Unboxed.
Authenticity is your guide to cast an impact on the world that you will be proud of. Signing off with pride, Tiana
and Brad.
Thank you so much.